Channel 2 developing across the United States, calls for justice are growing.
There's growing outrage tonight after a video shows a Minneapolis police officer kneeling on the neck of a black man who later died.
George Floyd. So it's a now viral video.
Outrage across the nation.
It on the wave of protests and unrest taking place at this hour across the country.
People are losing their lives, so we have to risk our lives in order to make something, to have change.
And the Derek Chauvin trial has just told the judge that they have reached a verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. Caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. Verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty.
If we were all born blind, would race really matter? You cheer for me on the courts and the arenas, but will you still cheer for me on the streets? Can you imagine what it must feel like to go by a candy bar and know you're being watched just because of your gender or your race?
So what, you a big
If you're black or brown and you have money, you sell drugs, right? A well-known reality in today's society is the major social issue of the overrepresentation of minorities, especially black people, who face consistent unjust treatment within the criminal justice system. There has been continued complex problems that displace disproportionate arrests and incarceration of minorities. This inevitably trickles down the generations of weakened minority communities, families, and neighborhoods. The causes of such disparity varies and consists of differing levels of criminal activity, law enforcement emphasis on particular communities, legislative policies, and decision-making by criminal justice practitioners who use broad discretion in this justice process. The existence of racial disparity within the criminal justice system is a major inducement as to why programs such as the Innocent Project exists. It is necessary for organizations like this to be maintained in order to work towards rectifying the complex racial situation at hand. Mass incarceration is a major socioeconomic issue, and the effects of it leads to individuals developing major mental health issues that are not treated properly when they are incarcerated, and it carries on when they are released. When looking deeper into the effects of racial disparity and its foundations, we can see how the younger generation are targeted early in childhood. This can also be defined as the school-to-prison pipeline. School-to-prison pipeline is the disproportionate tendencies of minors and young adults from the disadvantaged backgrounds to become incarcerated because of increasingly harsh school and municipal policies within the United States.
You know, it doesn't matter how many degrees I get. All you people see is color.
The school-to-prison pipeline is a phenomenon where students become formally involved with the criminal justice system as a result of school policies. These policies use law enforcement rather than discipline to address behavioral problems. A potentially important part of the SPP is the sworn resource officers. This leads to law enforcement agencies learning more about crimes in schools upon receipt of a grant and more likely to make arrests of those crimes. This primarily affects children under the age of 15. The placement of SROs increases school safety and helps law enforcement make arrests for drug crimes occurring on and off the school grounds. SROs serve two purposes: to maintain order and safety for students and teachers in a way that a typical school security guard could not, and also to positively interact with a student on a daily basis, normalizing officers in the eyes of students and potentially improving police and community relations. Education is one of the strongest predictors of lifetime wealth, and lack of access to quality education is one of the most known frequently cited constraints on upward mobility in areas of persistent poverty. Areas of high concentrated poverty are also typically characterized by high rates of crime and disorder, which can have adverse effects on the educational attainment and future job prospects of young people growing up in those neighborhoods. On one hand, the proactive criminal justice agency can complement strong educational infrastructure in communities, and on the other hand, criminal justice agents can be too aggressive in the arrest, prosecution, and sentencing of people who violate the law. Children who are arrested and incarcerated are less likely to complete high school, and certain types of criminal records limit potential students' eligibility for federal grants and loans that can aid in paying for a college degree. Young people who become involved with criminal justice system are more likely to continue to be criminally involved and suffer more persistent negative employment consequences of that criminal record. It has been proven that the introduction of police officers into an educational institution appeared to change the dynamics of the school environment and does lead to an increase in arrests of young children, specifically the minor offenses that happen to occur on school grounds. However, there is a continued potential for the presence of officers on school grounds to have a positive effect on the ability for local police to be able to do their jobs outside of the school day. It is important to pose the question, are these law enforcement agencies shifting the school environment and potentially providing unnecessary foundations of a criminal record, continuing to put minorities in a disadvantage pertaining to their personal and professional growth?
My name is Camille Charles. I am a Black woman, a mother to a Black son, a sister, a cousin, auntie to many Black boys and girls. Racism against minority youth is something that impacts my life often. Minority youth are disproportionately outnumbering those who are white at every stage within the nation's juvenile system. Minority involvement with juvenile justice occur when minority youth come to contact with the system at a higher rate than their white counterparts. Although African Americans, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islanders, and Native American Indian make 1/3 of the nation's youth population, they account for over 2/3 of the youth in the juvenile facilities.
Last
On
night,
April
a woman
19,
jogger was found unconscious and
1989,
partially clothed in Central Park. She was beaten and sexually assaulted.
and left unconscious in Central Park, New York.
Central Park was holy. It was the crime of the century.
The attack was a random assault blamed on 5 young Black males and 1 Hispanic. Their age ranged from 13 to 16 years old. Those young minority boys were arrested and charged with second-degree assault. 4 of them served 4 years in jail, and the 16-year-old was sentenced as an adult and served 13 years in jail without evidence that they committed the crime.
Paints the picture of what it is like to be a person of color in America.
2002, the charges were dropped because a prisoner confessed to the crime, not because the justice system did its job. According to the Nation Council on Crime and the Children Law and Policy, minority youth receive harsher treatment than their white counterpart. Minority juveniles tend to be confined and sentenced for longer period and less likely to receive alternative sentences or probation compared to the white juvenile. Oppression, such as violence, exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, and cultural imperialism also affect the minority group in numerous ways. Incarceration is a major way that minorities are affected by oppression because of the unjustified treatment they receive while in prison. Another way that oppression affects the minority is the stigma that is associated with them due to being incarcerated. Minorities have never been treated as equal to the majority white population in the United States. The U.S. is considered to be a race consciousness nation. Someone's race can influence how they will be treated and what opportunity they will be given. Unfortunately, we do not get to pick our race and what class we are born into. Let's continue to advocate for equal right for all.
Racial disparity is defined as existing in the criminal justice system when the proportion of a racial ethnic group within the control of the system is greater than the proportion of such groups in the general population. For decades, minorities have been faced with racial disparity at a higher rate of incarceration than those involved with similar crimes. Thousands of black and brown people are wrongly convicted in the United States and have endured unthinkable injustices, decades of wrongful conviction, and had their lives completely destroyed by the criminal justice system. The racial disparities in adult and juvenile justice systems stem in part from the policing.
NYPD, we do not engage in racial profiling. It is prohibited by law. We train our officers that they need reasonable suspicion to make a stop. And I can assure you that race is never a reason to conduct a stop.
And pretrial factors are heightened by the discretionary decisions and sentencing policies that disadvantage people of color because of their race or higher rates of socioeconomic disadvantages. To re-enter society, even after individuals have fully completed their term of incarceration. Due to their criminal records, minorities are faced with obstacles trying to gain employment, housing, government assistance, and stripped of voting rights. In order to change these barriers for individuals and communities, we must bridge the gap between criminal justice and the public health systems.
If you're looking to get involved, consider becoming an advocate for the Innocence Project. This is a nonprofit organization that aims at exonerating wrongly convicted individuals through the use of modern DNA testing, as well as advocating for the reform of the criminal justice system. Their mission is to free the staggering number of innocent people who remain incarcerated and to bring reform to the system responsible for their unjust imprisonment. The project exonerates wrongly incarcerated individuals by seeking DNA testing to overturn a guilty verdict. It improves through the education it provides those in the legal system on the inaccuracy of faulty forensic scientific methods. And it educates through the Science and Research Department, which utilizes scientific data to analyze and understand patterns that lead to wrongful convictions. Here is a picture of Archie Williams, a black man that was arrested for the rape and stabbing of a white woman in 1983. Despite lack of evidence and faulty eyewitness testimony, Williams was sentenced to prison. The Innocence Project took his case in 1995, and through the use of modern DNA testing, Williams was exonerated and released from prison in 2019. Archie Williams is just one of many who have suffered from wrongful convictions. We urge you to join the fight by working alongside the social workers that advocate, assimilate, and bring justice to those wrongly accused.
Is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. You're not doing anything, you fucking bitch! You're not doing anything!